Going on, folks? Burning the midnight oil, actually past the midnight oil. Here, uh, already on this early Monday morning. Before I get to bed, put some more work in again with Acts chapter 10 and Kill and Eat. This time I'm going to call on some help from my friends at Kingdom Seekers. Their YouTube short creates an opportunity for me to again help accomplish what I want with some of these videos, or actually what the Yahweh wants, and that's to help a lot of you Christians out there that just don't sharpen up your swords, that you don't put on that whole armor of Yahweh, and then these Torah observant teachers come along that desire to be teachers of the law. They confidently affirm they know what they're saying, and they don't. However, though, most of you Christians out there, you just don't have your sword sharpened. You don't have that full armor on, and these guys chop you up, because even though Christians come to the right conclusion about kill and eat and Mark chapter 7, okay, they don't rebuttal the Torah observant teachers and those that desire to be teachers of the law. They don't rebuttal them correctly, and that just compounds the problem and just builds up their confidence to realize, hey, you guys don't know what you're talking about, even though you come to the right conclusion. It's almost like when you were in school in math class and your teacher said, okay, here's your math assignment, solve the problem and show your work. You come to the right answer, but you weren't able to show your work how you did it, and then you get the whole thing wrong. That's the way Torah observant teachers see that, and it just makes the problem worse. So they're creating a problem. The problem with Kingdom Seekers, again, I like them. They're a good group of guys. I have to admit, I like. They seem to have a good spirit about them. The problem is when they're confronted with their error, then they just shy away and they don't really want to. See, and that's being a hypocrite. That's wisdom with partiality and hypocrisy, because that's what Christians do. So in other words, take that speck out for it. But anyway, it creates an opportunity. So we're going to go to this video. This is on Mark 7, folks, and again, love these guys. They're brethren. They are brethren. I was a Torah observant Messianic at one time for 20 years of my youth, trained by some of the best I know, but Yahweh got me out of that, about 26 years ago now, and I thank him for that. So I'm well aware. I was on guys like Kingdom Seeker side once. I'm well aware of the doctrine, but Yahweh showed me no, and I've repented of that. Okay, but again, they're still brethren. They're still brethren. I'm not a Christian. I don't identify as a Christian, because Christians also have false doctrine on their side too, but I still consider them brethren also. Just here trying to help. Let's just listen to this real short video, guys, and also for Kingdom Seekers as well. They're good guys, but they just tend to avoid me when I'm trying to show them, guys, what are you doing? Let's go ahead and hear the video real quick from my friends at Kingdom Seekers, talking about Mark chapter 7.
Run to Mark 7 and say that Yeshua declared all foods clean. One way that I prove to them that this whole entire incident is not about Yeshua and the Pharisees arguing about whether or not you can eat pork. It has nothing to do with Yeshua telling his disciples they can eat unclean meats. It has nothing to do with it. How do I know? Well, you take them to Mark 7, verses 1 through 3, and I'll read it to you right now. It says, "Now when the Pharisees gathered to him with some of the scribes who had come from Jerusalem, they saw that some of Yeshua's disciples ate with hands that were defiled, that is, unwashed. For the Pharisees and all the Jews do not eat unless they wash their hands properly, holding to the tradition of the elders."
Okay, now we'll stop right there. Now, you heard what my friends at Kingdom Seeker said, and this is a learning tool for you Christians out there. Apparently, there are a lot of Christians out there that will tell Torah observant folks, specifically Torah observant teachers. There's still aspects of the Torah that I still keep, of course. I'm not judging anyone on that aspect. It's just when I'm just here to help. But sometimes you got to pull that sword out and do your job. That's what I'm trying to do. With that being said and done, if you listen to what my friends at Kingdom Seekers are saying, apparently there's Christians out there that argue that the context of Mark 7 is the Pharisees arguing, or Yahshua arguing with the Pharisees that you can eat pork now. Okay, that's kind of what my friend is trying to... and what he's saying is that is not the context at all. It's about washing your hands before you eat, is what that whole thing... Torah observant teachers, that's what they all hang their hat on, folks. I know I was on that side once. They all hang their hat on shutting down anyone that throws Mark 7 at them. And they confidently affirm, and in a way, again, it doesn't help when the Christian, even though you come to the right conclusion, you rebuttal it in a way that only benefits their false teaching of Mark 7. Mark 7 is pivotal. If you blow Mark 7 / Matthew 15, then you're going to blow Acts 10. You're going to blow Acts 15. That's why I do these videos. You're going to blow Galatians 2, 11 to 14. You're going to totally blow Colossians 2, 16. Okay, you're going to blow Romans 14 up. Okay, it's a down. It just gets worse. It's that fork in the road. Like Yahshua says also in Mark 7, or in Matthew 15, that, the blind, like leading the blind, that's what's going to happen. It just gets worse and worse. And then what happens to the Torah observant teachers is they begin to play this game of verbal gymnastics to try to hang on to their doctrine. So let's go back to the video, and again, hopefully there's people out there, Christians out there that can, and also my friends here at Kingdom Seekers, that I pray, I love them, but that they see the error of their ways again. Let's start again from the beginning.
Mark 7 and say that Yeshua declared all foods clean. One way that I prove to them that this whole entire incident is not about Yeshua and the Pharisees arguing about whether or not you can eat pork.
Now I'm going to stop him right there. He's right. Even though I know it's the underlying, I know what he's really driving at. But on the surface, he's right. This passage is not about Yahshua arguing with the Pharisees that you can eat pork now. Okay? That's not what this is quite about. However, though, it is going to lead into Yahshua declaring all foods clean. Now, I will say this up front. I'm well aware of the argument, because I was, again, a Messianic once, that phrase in Mark 7, thus he declared all foods clean, that's not in the original Greek. I understand that. So what I'm going to do is we're going to pull up Mark 7 using the KJV. And I'm okay with that. I'm perfectly okay with that. I trust me. They're correct. In the original Greek manuscripts, you do not see the phrase "thus he declared all foods clean." That is correct. It's a moot point, which I try to show them. It's moot. It may not say that, but the context says that. Okay, this is why they don't really like to deal with me, because that doesn't quite work over here. I'm just trying to help. In other words, no. I'm just trying to help these guys out. But this is where pride kicks in which case, well then, how can you help the Christian take that speck out when you guys are doing the same thing? Again, do not many become teachers, my friend, knowing to be, and see how this all works. No, that's why I'm trying to help. That's why I honestly do care. Now, getting back over here, he's right about that part. But the underlying point, which I'm going to show, which I try to show these guys, I'm not just speaking on Kingdom Seekers, but all these Torah observant groups on YouTube that are pulling this, some of them they insult intelligence. They really do. They insult Yahshua. They mock Elohim when you put them in the corner with Scripture. Okay, but Kingdom Seekers is not one of those guys. They just avoid you. That's what, again. Anyway, let's continue on what he's saying.
Nothing to do with Yeshua telling his disciples they can eat unclean meats. It has nothing to do with it.
It does, but at first it doesn't start that way. But it does pick up to where he expounds on it. We'll show you that in a minute using the KJV, which is what these Torah observant they prefer the KJV interpretation of Mark 7 because it does not have "thus he declared all foods clean," and that's fine. We're going to use that. We're still going to use that version.
How do I know? Well, you take them to Mark 7, verses 1 through 3.
Now listen to what he's saying. How does he know? Well, you take him to Mark chapter 7, which is good. Search the scriptures, verses 1 through, I believe he said verses 1 through 3, but let me back up.
Verses 1 through 3, and
1
I'll
through
read
3.
it to you right now. It says, Now when the Pharisees gathered to him with some of the scribes who had come from Jerusalem, they saw that some of Yeshua's disciples ate with hands that were defiled, that is, unwashed. For the Pharisees and all the Jews do not eat unless they wash their hands properly, holding to the tradition of the elders.
And that's the end of the YouTube short. Now, for my friends at Kingdom Seekers, again, listen to what you're claiming on YouTube. If you're a Christian, listen to what he is saying, because this is what a lot of Torah observant groups use to try to wear you out. And maybe many of them don't. Maybe many of them don't know. Some of them are just flat out ministers of deceit. I've run into quite a few of them already. Others, maybe they just don't know. But it leads you down the wrong path. Okay? So, let's look at that passage in Mark chapter 7, beginning verses 1 through 3. Now, I'm going to put it up on the screen. The KJV. This is from the KJV, which is what they prefer to use in this situation because it excludes, thus he declared all foods clean. And that's fine. I'm in agreement with them. Yes, it doesn't say that in the original Greek, even though the context is saying that. Okay? But let's start here. This is from the KJV. And you heard he said, the way he knows is simple. Just read the first 3 verses like he did. And it tells you this has nothing to do with eating unclean meats or pork or anything like that. Okay? And it says here, then came, actually I'll read it out of my Bible, but you could see it here on the screen out of the KJV. Okay? Verse 1, and there are gathered together to him the Pharisees and certain of the scribes who had come from Jerusalem, and had seen that some of the disciples ate their bread with defiled, that is, unwashed hands. For the Pharisees and all the Jews, except they wash their hands diligently, eat not, holding the tradition of the elders. Those 3 verses right there. Okay? Those 3 verses is what he's saying proves that Mark 7 has nothing to do with you being able to eat unclean food. Okay? Because it has to do with the rabbinic traditions, the rabbinic laws, not the laws of Yahweh, the rabbinic laws, the rabbinic traditions of the Jews, which is true. They took that from Exodus chapter 30, which there is a law talking about the Levites, or the sons of Aaron, and then they expounded that to include everybody. But that's not what the Torah says. It's only supposed to be for the sons of Aaron, the Levites. But they made it for all the Jews. So that's why it's a man-made law. Okay? That's what the context is about, is what these Torah observant teachers state. Now, here's where they err in their ways. Okay? Now, first of all, let's look at the passage that he stated. And with that passage, and this just takes a little bit of common sense, folks. It really does. Not that I'm trying to be insulting. But again, 1 Timothy 1:5 does say that, these men desire to be teachers of the law, but they confidently affirm they know what they're saying, but they don't. Notice it says, then came together unto him the Pharisees and certain of the scribes which came from Jerusalem. And when they saw some of his disciples eat bread with defiled, that is to say, with unwashed hands, they found fault. This is telling you right here that our Savior's disciples are eating their bread without washing their hands. How do we know? Because it says so. It flat out tells you they're not washing their hands before they eat bread. Okay? Verse 3, for the Pharisees, and as my friend from Kingdom Seeker said, he read it, and all the Jews. Notice what, and remember, I'm taking his verse here. And all the Jews, except they wash their hands, often eat, not holding the tradition of the elders. Okay? Now, you see it right there. If you're from Kingdom Seekers, okay, are the disciples and Peter, are they not Jews? Yeah, they're Jews. Peter, later on in Acts 10:28, does he not say that, you know, it's an unlawful thing for a Jew, right? Does Paul say in Galatians 2, if you being a Jew, Peter, yeah, Peter's a Jew. And that passage in Mark 7 in the KJV shows all of the Jews wash their hands before they eat bread because of the tradition of the elders. It clearly says that. Even my friends at Kingdom Seekers just got done reading that very verse. Okay? Now, I'm going to put up a visual. Hey, visuals help me. I'm not trying to insult anybody. Honestly, visuals help. They help me. Everybody has different ways of learning. I'm just going with something that does work for me. Maybe it might help some others. Again, not being facetious, just going with a visual here, because sometimes it does help. Let me show you this visual here to kind of grasp this a little bit better. Here we go. Okay. Again, these are just visual representations. I know these were actors from the movie The Passion. Again, I understand that, but again, just visual representations. Here we have the Pharisees. Okay? The Pharisees. Here we have Yahshua the Messiah, and we have Peter and some of the other apostles. Okay? They're at the dinner table. They are all Jews, and we know that the passage clearly states, as I showed you just a while ago, that all Jews wash their hands before they eat bread. But for some reason, these Jews right here aren't doing that. Specifically the disciples. So the Pharisees are asking in Mark 7, this is Matthew's account, which says it's pretty much the same thing. Mark's account, again, they noticed that these Jews, which are Yahshua's disciples, who used to wash their hands all the time before they ate bread. Remember, the passage says all the Jews wash their hands before they eat bread, according to the tradition of the elders. Which means Peter and the apostles, yeah, they used to always do that too. But for some reason, they're not doing that anymore. The passage is stating, which is why the Pharisees are asking, why aren't they? Okay, so we're just use common sense. Okay, so the question now is this: yeah, why aren't they? Is it number one because they just decided to do something different? But they don't know why, they just decided to do something different. No, of course not. Is it number two because they just wanted to upset the Pharisees? Hey, let's piss them off. Let's get it. Does that make sense? No. Which is why in Matthew 15 you're going to see the disciples are going to say, do you know the Pharisees were offended? No. It's not because of that. Or is it number three because Yahshua has already told them that that's rabbinic law? It doesn't hold no weight. It's a man-made tradition. It is not the law of my Father. It doesn't defile you. Yeah. That's why the disciples are not washing their hands before they eat that bread, because they know that all Jews, like the passage states, let me repeat that, they know that all Jews, their mom, their dad, their brothers, sisters, they used to always do that. They know that's what they do. But they now know, according to Yahshua, doesn't mean anything. It's a man-made tradition because Yahshua has already taught them that. And they already understand that. Because if they didn't understand that, they would wash their hands then, because they wouldn't get that. But because we see that they are not doing that, your common sense tells you they already know it doesn't defile you, because Yahshua already taught them that, which is why they are showing, yeah, we know. Now, in Mark 7, what then happens is they're asking Yahshua a question. Now, let me actually sorry, that's not the one. We're going to pull that back up on the screen and see how this plays out. If you don't have a Bible, the first 13 verses of Mark 7, folks, is the showdown between Yahshua and the Pharisees about this whole controversy. Why are the disciples not washing their hands? Okay, so I'll read it again out of my Bible. You see, we already read the first 3 verses. Okay, for the Pharisees and all the Jews, they're asking the question, why are your disciples not doing that? And we know it says all the Jews wash their hands often before they eat. This right here, because of the tradition of the elders. Except Yahshua's disciples, because they've already been taught and they already understand that it does not defile you. Now, we'll pick up here at verse 4. I'll read it out of my Bible. And when they come from the marketplace, except they bathe themselves, they eat not, and many other things there are which they have received to hold, washing of cups and pots and copper vessels. Verse 5. And the Pharisees and the scribes ask him, why walk not your disciples according to the tradition of the elders, but eat their bread with defiled hands? So we know that that's exactly what his disciples are doing. And the context shows they already know that it doesn't defile you, because if they did not understand, then they would have washed their hands before they ate bread. That's just called common sense. Now, verse 6. And he said to them, well did Isaiah prophesy of you hypocrites, as it is written, this people honors me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. But in vain do they worship me, teaching as their doctrines the precepts of men. Now, did the disciples not wash their hands before they ate bread because Yahshua taught them that this is the doctrines of men? Yes. This is why the disciples understood that eating with unwashed hands does not defile us, because this is simply doctrines of men, which is why we see they're no longer washing their hands when they know all the Jews do. This is just common. This is context, folks. This is context. Okay? Now, what Yahshua's going to do is he's not going to answer their question. He's not going to answer their question directly and say, well, the reason why they're not washing their hands before they eat bread is because it's just a doctrine of man. Even though he's insinuating that. What he's going to do is he's going to bring up the law of Corban and expose their hypocrisy, which pretty much states that you make void the commandment of Yahweh. You make void the commandment of Yahweh for the sake of your man-made commandments. I'm just doing that to save time. Feel free to read that he hammers the point. You make void the commandment of Yahweh. He brings up the law of Corban and honor your father and mother, that whole situation there. All right? You make void the commandment of Yahweh for the sake of your man-made commandments and traditions. It's right here. I think my friends at Kingdom Seekers would agree. Yeah, that's exactly how he handles that. By the end of verse 13, he is done talking to the Pharisees. He's done at the end of verse 13. Okay? Now, let's go to verse 14. Now, I color-coded this. This is still Mark 7, folks. This is what, again, I hope my friends and kingdom seekers can take advantage of this and correct their error. We all make mistakes. And for you Christians, I hope it will help arm you, because you guys come to the right conclusion. You just don't know how to shut down these Torah observant teachers. I say that humbly. I have that advantage because I used to be on that side. I'm not a victim. In other words, my beloved Messianics, I still call them. Beginning in verse 14. Beginning in verse 14. Now, this red portion you're about to hear, Yahshua is no longer talking to the Pharisees. He's not. That conversation is over. He is now talking to a different audience. Okay? And it's this red section that is going to be what the disciples and Peter don't understand. This is not talking about washing hands. It's coming off of the subject of washing hands, but it's expounding. It is expounding, and you'll see why. Verse 14. Notice it says, and he called to him the multitude. It doesn't say he called the Pharisees. No. He called all the people, the multitude. Not the Pharisees. He's done with the Pharisees. He called all the multitude unto him. Again, this is still out of the KJV. I'm just reading out of my Bible. And he says to them, hear me, all of you, and understand. There is nothing from outside the man. This is verse 15. There is nothing from outside the man that going into him can defile him. But the things which proceed out of the man are those that defile the man. If any man has ears to hear, let him hear. See that red portion right there? Okay? This is a different subject, even though it's coming off of the washing of hands before you eat bread. Okay? But notice he says, there is nothing. Now, when we go to the Strongs out of the KJV, again, because my Torah observant friends here, that's what they prefer. That's fine. That's okay. We're gonna take the KJV and we're gonna go with that. This is the Strongs, the KJV. When you see that word nothing, verse 15, Mark 7:15, there is nothing. That's number 3762. 3762 in the Greek. 3762 in the Greek. Udais, or udase. I'm not great at Greek, okay? Udase. Including the feminine udamaya. Again, you can see the pronunciations here. And neuter from 3761 and 1520. Not even one. Man, woman, or thing. Man, woman, or thing. Is a ham sandwich a thing? Yes. Is lobster cocktail a thing? Yes. In other words, none. Nobody. Nothing. Any man, aunt, man, neither, anything, never, man, no man, none, nothing. Not at all. That not. No one. Nothing. Folks, I mean, does that sound like he's still talking about washing your hands before you eat bread? No. Nothing. I'll repeat that again. Verse 15. There is nothing. Now that is in the original Greek. That is in the original Greek. Remember, by that same measure we choose to judge kingdom seekers, and not just you guys, but the other Torah observant. That's the measure we now use. Okay? This is now Yahshua Messiah. You can't, I say this, somebody weasel your way out, and that's what these Torah observant did. They don't like it when you put it show right back to them. There is nothing. Okay? He's telling the crowd that is outside of the man, that going into the man can defile him. Nothing. Now, picture you're the disciples. Okay? Yeah, we used to wash our hands before we eat bread. Remember, it said all the Jews, yeah, we used to do that. But we stopped doing that when he told us that, oh, it's just man-made tradition. That's not actually the law of my Father. That doesn't defile you. Oh, which is why they stopped doing it. Now they're hearing Yahshua say, wait a minute. Did he just say nothing? Whoa, time out. What about Leviticus 11? What about, whoa. This is why they're not getting it. Whoa. He just said nothing. He just told us washing our hands. But nothing? Peter's not getting it. Now, again, that's Kingdom Seekers, if you're listening, I love you guys. Let's not mock Elohim. He loves y'all too. If you're other, and not just you Kingdom Seekers, the other Torah, not just, there's a lot of other guys. Matthew Jansen's another one that likes to ignore these things. Come on. This is how, remember, I was trained by, I was on y'all's side. I love you guys. I miss y'all. You're still my dear beloved Messianics. However, though, let's not play that game. You guys are intelligent. With all that being said and done, that word is very clear. Nothing. Now, what these Torah observant teachers do is they try desperately to find a way to. Whoa, it's still talking about what? No. Let's not mock Elohim. Galatians 6:6. Okay, I'm under orders. Again, I was raised 20 years from 5 up. That's what Galatians 6:6 is all about. Communicate all these things with. I'm not a teacher, but you guys are. Those that were taught from the youth. That's what I'm doing. But let's not mock Elohim. Galatians 6:6 says. That's what I'm trying to do, guys. I love y'all. With that being said and done, now when we go over to the passage, this is why when we get to the blue section, which is verse 17, this is where the disciples, now if you go to Matthew 15, it's Peter. But if it's Mark's account, it shows the disciples. They're going to ask Yahshua, wait a minute, can you explain that to us? Like that parable, like, wait, what did this mean? And when he was entered into the house from the people, so now he's away from the Pharisees, he's away from the multitude, they're in a house just with him and the disciples. His disciples asked him, in Matthew 15 it says Peter asked him concerning the parable. Tell us, what did that mean? What did this mean? Verses 14, 15. And he says unto them, are you still without understanding also? Do you not? Now, let's look at this, verse 18. Are you still without understanding also? Now, is he talking about them not getting that eating bread with unwashed hands doesn't defile you? No, because they already knew that. If they didn't understand that, then they would have washed their hands before they ate bread, because they didn't understand it. Because all Jews did that, just like the passage says in verse 3. Remember, folks, by the same measure you use, Kingdom Seekers, you can't. What is greater? The gold, the temple that sanctifies the gold. You can't play that game. The Pharisees do that. Okay? Now, what they are inquiring is, again, verses 14 and 15. What do you mean, nothing? That is declaring all foods clean without saying all foods are clean. Remember, we speak wisdom in a mystery, things that eye saw not and heard not. If faith is the assurance of things hoped for and the evidence of things that we can't see, but we know they're there, well, gentlemen, are we justified by works of the law or by works of faith? When Abraham went to sacrifice Isaac, did he know that there was going to be a goat that's just going to pop out of nowhere? No. But he did state Yahweh will provide himself a sacrifice, an animal. And then here comes that goat. It's works of faith. However, though, he's about to murder his son. No, he's not. See, we're not justified. Again, that's a different subject. In other words, Abraham didn't tell Yahweh, no, not so. Cain murdered Abel. No. Like Peter does. Because Peter wants to be justified by works of the law, not by works of faith. That's probably what he's told Yahweh. No. That's not how that works. The context clearly shows that what the Pharisees, that what the disciples and Peter didn't understand is, what did you mean, nothing? that is outside of a man that goes in his mouth, through the stomach, and out the drought defiles a man. What do you mean by that? Because you just told us, well, it's a man-made tradition. That doesn't defile you. And that made sense to us. That's why we didn't wash our hands before we ate. Because, yeah, it made sense. We went along with Messiah. They got that. They don't get that part. That's what today's Christian is trying to tell, even though they don't do it right, the Torah observant teacher. Now it's up to the Now it's up for the Torah observant teacher to understand when they say in Acts 10, well, it's been 10 years since Joshua. If Joshua made all foods clean, in Mark 7, well then apparently Peter didn't get the memo. Yeah, that's right. They're not getting the memo. Are you still without understanding that whatever goes into your mouth, see those animals in that blanket, Peter? Whatever goes into your mouth, and they're going to go through your stomach, and it's going to come out in the drought. Yeah, ham sandwiches come out in the toilet. They do. It goes in your stomach. That isn't a foul man. So arise, kill and eat. What I have cleansed, you stop calling common. Because I told you to go 10 years ago to all the nations and you're not doing it. Which is why when you get to Galatians 2, Paul's in his face and Peter's doing the total opposite. Uh-oh. Why is he doing the total opposite? Because apparently Titus is not compelled to get cut. And he's not compelled to stop eating his ham sandwich. It's just common sense, folks. This is why Peter repents in Acts chapter 15 when he arises and says, brethren, you know that a good while by way of Leviticus 5:4-5, because Peter uttered the vision rashly. The interpretation to the vision is found in Isaiah 65, verses 24-25. Feel free to look that up, gentlemen. But I'm getting off the subject, but finishing up right here, because just dealing with this context right here. Again, if for you Christians out there, I'll finish up here. My hope is that you can take this lesson right here and understand that when you hear that argument that Mark 7 has to do only with the washing of hands, it does up until verse 13. But what you have to understand is the disciples understood that eating with unwashed hands doesn't defile you, which is why they were eating with unwashed hands. Otherwise, like the passage says, all Jews do it because they think it does defile you. So if the disciples aren't doing it, that means they understood that it doesn't defile you. Otherwise, they would have done it. What they're not understanding, and what Torah observant teachers will twist, is verse 14-15. No. Yahshua is specifically using, in that Greek word I showed you, nothing, which causes the disciples to say, whoa, wait a minute, nothing? Yeah, and that word literally means nothing, and that includes a ham sandwich. Love you folks, and as for Kingdom Seekers and you Torah observant teachers, I love you guys, but come on, you guys are intelligent. I was one of y'all once too. I know y'all are getting this. Do the right thing. Do the right thing. Do the right thing. Yahweh corrects those who He loves. Love you guys. Yahweh bless you. We'll talk again very soon.